A Town Called Home by Lisa Shimkus. 1. Make sure you eat, my Joey. I love you. See you after work. Johanna, or Jo as she preferred, looked down at the kitchen table before her. There sat one oval green pill. Please be good, she groaned as she popped the food pellet into her mouth and swallowed it down with some water. Jo cringed. It tasted like grass, or at least what she imagined such greenery to taste like. Then she turned her attention back to the door where Mom just exited. Jo was alone. Again. She could not recall a time when her mother would be home for a full day. Mom was always gone, always working, because of her. Jo was the only child to Japanese-American Hana, a single mother and workaholic. Mom worked day and night to ensure Jo had all her needs met. At age 13, Jo had food in the form of pills, clothing, and shelter. Shelter itself was a 6-story apartment building that housed around 120 families. This building was also the town itself. It was a town that never needed to go outside. All its basic needs were met within the building. School and work could be performed on a computer, and all other needs could be obtained from the town shop, which was located on the first floor near the entrance. Jo didn't need much from the shop. Her clothes were either Dad's old ones or those she was outgrowing. She liked Dad's black zip-ups thrown over a tank and her comfy pair of jeans that has now risen above her ankles. There was a time when the pants hung loosely and had to be rolled up at her ankles. The young girl sighed and carried her heavy feet up the spiral stairs to the loft that served as her bedroom in this one-bed, one-bath unit. She crawled into her futon on the floor and sat herself up against the far back wall. There, she flipped open her school laptop and waited for the computer to power on. On the black screen, Jo could see a pale oval face with big dark eyes, a tiny nose, and plump lips. She pursed her lips and stared at her reflection. Jo considered herself plain. She was not as pretty as Mom, but at least she resembled Dad in his pictures. Jo never met her father, John. He passed away before Jo was born. The young girl wished she knew her dad. In her imagination, he was the more attentive, present parent. A picture of Dad sat next to Jo's bedside. He was the first person she saw in the morning and the last before she fell asleep for the night. The black screen on her laptop finally lit up. It was an old machine. Jo signed into class and was greeted by a banner that read English 7A. Jo clicked the join button and a red-haired woman with freckles appeared on one half of the screen. The other half of the screen had circles with kids' faces or avatars in each. "In class," said the woman. "Morning, Miss Jones," came the other voices from the computer. "We're just waiting for everyone to get logged on before school starts." Jo groaned to herself. School sucked. She could not understand why she had to attend class. Jo would rather be outside, walking around or playing on the playground across the street. "I would really love to see all your beautiful faces," said Miss Jones. Jo looked down at her own avatar. It was of a dark figure in a hoodie. She preferred it that way. Class began with Jo tuning in and out of the literature they had to read and discuss. She was partially listening until Miss Jones announced their next homework assignment. "As mentioned before, our unit this year is on growth. Your overall project is to showcase your own growth in 7th grade. You can do this through writing, such as a journal, or creating something, like a time capsule or a video. These are just examples, but I really want you to start thinking about what you want your overall project to be as we continue to delve into this topic." Jo thought to herself, journaling? No. Time capsule? No. Video? Definite no. She wondered what the consequences would be if she didn't do the unit homework. Would Miss Jones come marching into her home and demand she do the work? Just then, a knock came at the door, which startled Jo. Heaving the big, clunky computer off her lap, Jo returned to the main floor. She dragged her feet down the narrow hallway, past Mom's room and the bathroom, and went up to the door. "Who's there?" Jo asked. "It's me, Jo, just checking up on you, kid." It was Mom's boyfriend, Isaac. Jo opened the door and looked up at a tall, blond man. His hair was disheveled, his blue eyes drowsy, and he was wearing a white t-shirt and black shorts with house slippers on his feet. Isaac clearly just woke up. "Hey, you doing your homework?" he asked, squeezing his eyes shut for a millisecond. I just got done with English class, Joe admitted. Math starts in 10 minutes. Isaac yawned. That's good. Let me know if you need anything. Sure. I'll be back around noon, okay? Okay. Joe shut the door. It was typical of Isaac to stop by the house, mostly to see Mom. Joe shook her head and returned to her room. During math, which was also taught by Miss Jones, Joe considered taking her laptop outside later in the day. It would be a great way to finish her school day. A message popped up on the screen for all to see. It was from Miss Jones herself. It read, "Remember, if you need any help at all, just email me. One-on-one lessons are possible." Joe was stunned. One-on-one lessons with a teacher? Actual human interaction with someone who was not Mom, Isaac, nor the shop owner downstairs? Joe longed for any form of human contact. Everyone in the town kept to their own individual units. Joe has never met her neighbors nor classmates before. Her whole life she has only known 3 adults, her unit, and the nooks and crannies of the building itself. The young girl considered taking advantage of her teacher's support to feel more human, but Joe also feared the contact. Maybe not today. After math class, Joe and her computer left the tiny unit. They walked down the yellow hallway to the elevator, which always looked ready to break down, and went down to the main floor. "Morning, Joey," came a voice from near the exit. Joe popped her head into the shop, where a black lady sat behind the counter. "Morning, Mrs. J," she greeted the store clerk. "You doing your homework?" the woman asked. "Yes, ma'am." "That's good. Feel free to stop in if you need any help with your work." "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. J was the first human Joe met outside of Mom and Isaac, when at a young age she snuck out of the unit to roam. Mrs. J immediately caught Tiny Joe trying to leave the town. On this day, the woman would watch the young girl through the building's front doors. Joe walked up to the entryway and pushed the door open. Then she stepped out into a sea of dry earth. 2. Divvy sat by the window of his family's unit and stared out the window. Although his school laptop was on the family's round dining table, the young boy was not interested in schoolwork that morning. Instead, he was more intrigued by the activity outside. He looked down at the playground across the street at the same one and only girl on the merry-go-round. She was always outside, one time or another, in her oversized hoodie and ankle-length pants. Divvy could tell it was cold out because the girl had her hoodie wound tightly around her head, where only a part of her face could be seen, and she kept huffing into her hands. He wondered if the girl was lonely and calling out for a companion by making herself clearly visible to a town of people who kept to themselves. Divvy could surely use a friend who was not a member of his family, the only people he's known since birth. He touched the glass panel, pressed his forehead against a cold window, and sighed to himself. "What's the matter, my Divvy?" A voice spoke. A pudgy yet happy elderly woman was looking over at him from the living room. "Grandma?" Divvy looked over at the sweet woman. "Why can't we go outside?" His grandmother cringed. "There were dark times," she spoke. "Lots of dying. And so everyone stayed inside, and the dying stopped." "How come that girl, the same one I see every day, gets to go outside then?" "Maybe she's immune." "Immune to what?" Grandma shook her head. "I'll tell you another time." Just then, a tall man entered the space from one of the bedrooms. "Divvy, stop bothering your grandmother with so many questions," he ordered. "Sorry," Divvy apologized, as his grandmother winked at him. Joining him at the table was a girl who looked almost identical to Divvy. If it wasn't for her long hair, one would have thought they were one kid with a mirror next to him or herself. If they were to come upon a stranger, that person would know they were related. "Move over, little bro," she said, taking a seat next to him. "Nicky, I'm only a year younger than you," he retorted. "Besides, you were working in Mom and Dad's room." "Mom kicked me out. She needs to make an important phone call." Divvy rolled his eyes. "What are you working on?" Nicky peered over at his screen. "Social studies. You?" Nicky scoffed. "That's boring. I've got math." Divvy snorted in return. "Good luck. You hate math, remember?" His sister made a face. "Not as much as I hate you. Now move." She tried to nudge Divvy out of his window seat. "I was here first. Get your own seat." "The both of you, stop," their father growled. "Your mother is on the phone." Divvy was about to protest when his grandmother interfered. "Nicky," she said harshly to the sister. "Divvy was there first. You go upstairs." "But it's so cramped up there." Nikki, Dad, and Grandma started to bicker then. Divvy grunted, stood up, and shut his laptop. He stomped down the narrow hall to the front door and heaved it open. No one seemed to care nor notice that he was leaving the stuffy unit. Divvy threw himself against the adjacent wall and slid down to a sitting position. Then he reopened his laptop, where a man in a collared top and tie was showing them a map and talking away, and Divvy tried intently to follow along. After homework was announced, he signed out of class. Divvy stared blankly at his screen, where the slight reflection of a dark-haired, dark-skinned boy stared back at him. The boy had big brown eyes that only made him look more like his sister, more feminine, and his skin had a few bumps and acne scars. Divvy made a face and wished acne did not come with being a teenager. Just then, the elevator, which was not too far away, dinged. After the odd door toggled for a second or two, it finally slid open and a dark figure stepped out. Divvy's arms dropped to his side. His whole body went limp. He could only stare in surprise because stepping out of the elevator was the girl from outside. Divvy was too shocked for words and could only nod. The girl nodded in return and retreated down the hall and out of sight. Only after the girl disappeared did Divvy inhale deeply and his body shook back to life. "It's her!" Divvy's insides screamed. He never thought he'd meet her in person, but that was her, another kid just like him. Another kid in this dreadful building where everyone lives, yet no one leaves. A kid who can go outside. A sudden thought hit Divvy. He had to meet the girl. He had to ask her, how does she do it? Go outside. Because he wanted her to show him how. He wanted to meet the outside world as well. Divvy was ready to leave his wretched unit.